Good evening, everyone. The Ranter is back to go into yet another one of his rambling diatribes of the news of the day. Um, there's a little bit of distance between my last rant and now. Last few weeks has been, somewhat stress-free. 2 weeks ago, I passed my 42nd birthday. I was on vacation. I went out to Ocean City on the off-season. Maryland, not New Jersey. And it was actually pretty relaxing. I went out to Fenwick Beach, which Fenwick Island on its beach. It was actually kind of nice to look from left to right, from a mile radius, and only see about a dozen people at either total on either end. So that's nice, and it was cool out, and it was windy. It was like love the environment. I just wish I had a beach chair at the time. So went did that last week. Went out and I did early voting on last Thursday. Spent 2 hours in line, and it was well worth it in order for me to get in and do what I needed to do for my piece of the civil contract that is being an American. And so, generally I've been pretty chill and pretty relaxed and somewhat, no, not somewhat, pretty much happy. But I'm now back here, and some things just needs to be addressed. Now, obviously, since the last time I did my last video to now, we had a Supreme Court pick, a nomination, and a confirmation. Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. I didn't really put too much energy into this. One, because I knew this was a foregone conclusion that they were going to steamroll this. And, as much as the Democrats want to tout how they can stop things like this, mathematically, no. No, it wasn't going to get stopped. It was going to happen. Now, that does not mean you can't address any objections to it. I had a number of objections to it. One being obviously the hypocrisy that these same Republicans at the end of Obama's last year, not even at the end of his last year at his office, when Scalia passed and there was the push to replace him, and Obama put up Merrick Garland. The Republicans didn't even want to meet him. They didn't want to deal with him. They weren't going to deal with the nomination process because, they said then that they should wait till the election goes by so the people had their say and their choice. It's about the people, man. Well, that nomination that Obama put up, that was over 100 days till before election day. That's a good chunk of a year still in someone's last term in office, right? And these Republicans were so bold in standing up for these convictions, such as Lindsey Graham, that said, mark him in saying that if it was Donald Trump's last year of his first term and the Supreme Court pick was going to come up, they would wait, or he said he would wait till the next election before they would decide it, and you can keep the tape and you can play it back and use his words against him. Okay, well, yeah, he totally was bullshitting because he was steamrolling this as fast as humanly possible. So, he's a hypocrite on tape, and we can throw his quote back at him at any point whenever he addresses something on Twitter or makes any mention that is for public consumption that public can reply to. So there's that. My own worries on this, of it being a 6-3 conservatively not leaning but tipping over court, is that a lot of things that we as those who identify ourselves as either Democratic or liberal or however the spectrum you want to go, stuff like Roe v. Wade, stuff like gay marriage, stuff about concerning the environment or, election protections. A lot of these things now that was only safe because, maybe one justice had a crisis of conscience and realized that, these things shouldn't go away, had the scale, had the vote to do it 5-4. Well, now that we're in a 6-3 court, even if this same justice decided to vote the other way, as opposed to what the general consensus of those in the majority would think, nonetheless, that still would be 5-4, just going in the other direction now. So, those of us who worry about it, Roe v. Wade is one of these things that can go by the wayside. And if you think this is far-fetched, or you think that this is, they wouldn't do that. Or, because Roe v. Wade was decided with the Republican court to begin with. Well, here's the thing. When Judge Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed, when she was installed as justice, within those minutes of that confirmation, Mississippi put up their petition to the Supreme Court to readdress their 15-week ban on abortion. The importance of this is that the opinion that would be expressed on this matter would be the precedent that the lower courts can use when this issue comes up. This is one of the steps of getting rid of Roe. And to emphasize this point, Justice Barrett will be listening onto this case Friday. This is not some in the distant thing here. This is not, something that's happening in a few weeks. Let her settle in, like let her get her robe and so forth. No, this is the end of the week, with the week starting with her getting confirmed. So this is not something far-fetched. This is the wheels in motion towards it. Now, I do have an outside theory, though, that perhaps Roe won't exactly go down. Because there are people, even people who profess themselves politically pro-life, might not want Roe to go. And the reason I say this is because there's a lot of money in opposing it. You ever wonder why we only hear people lament over certain issues around election time? That, election time rolls by and, first of all, despite the seriousness of this election, and I do believe this is one of these points, it seems to me like every other election is always the most important election of our lives. But a lot of these issues that have strife, opposition, back and forth, people believing one way or another, they come out of the woodwork around election time. You talk about gay rights, gay marriage, trans rights. You talk about abortion. Talk about immigration. Talk about on the other side of the spectrum. You talk about gerrymandering, and you talk about voter suppression. Because we hear about that a lot. And we see that. We see examples of that in various states. But these things only come about around election time. A lot of these issues if you had people of conviction that really wanted these issues to go away, you had a White House and a majority in the Congress and the Senate, no matter what party you're in, that publicly feels so strongly about dealing with these issues, then between the first 100 days of the White House to the next election cycle, you can knock this shit out. Or at the very least, put enough effort into it that you can prove to the voters and the various demographic of voters who feel disenfranchised because they keep hearing the same shit every cycle, but we don't see any improvement or seeing any movement towards it. You might be able to prove to them that, hey, you actually give a shit, right? That you actually care. Not some scraps and token measures that people will applaud you for and you get a cookie for, but they're singular events that doesn't lead to a narrative or a forward motion. So you get enough people together in a Congress or a Senate for a majority, and as an average American would say, oh, well, we got this now, so obviously we can do something about the Green New Deal, we can do something about gerrymandering, we can do about making sure people's civil rights are still like respected, and everyone's made sure they're treated like everybody else. But it doesn't happen. You know, people I guess we're just too busy. There's so many things on our plate that some things fall through the cracks. But then they get busy on superficial stuff. So the very important stuff that they really need to take care of, that they said they would take care of, they believe they should take care of, they don't. Why? Because like I said about Roe, there is money in opposing something. Think of how much money it is when these politicians, they go to these fundraisers and let's say for the instance of abortion, they say how Christian-wise, how pro-life they are, how abortion is an abomination, we should go after the doctors, we should go after the women. You know, it should be outlawed throughout their life is precious, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, they're saying that and they're getting the donor money. People are fundraising, giving them money for their campaigns because they're going to fight for this crusade. Well, let's say for the sake of argument, the crusade wins. Roe is struck down. Abortion is no longer federally protected. It is no longer a right to choose federally for women, that it goes down to the states. What happened to all that money? All that money's going to go. There won't be any more money for that. This is kind of like, there's an old Chris Rock joke about why we don't cure diseases anymore. Why don't we cure diseases? Why would we treat diseases? We'll have treatments for them. You can live with the disease, and we'll give you, lifetime of treatment so you can be comfortable and you feel like you're healthy. But they don't cure it. They don't, because there's no money in the cure. Last time they cured something was polio. And all the money that goes to, iron lungs and the treatments for polio that the doctors and insurance can then hawk out of desperate people. Well, when that was gone, the world was happy, but, where did all that polio money go? So, I kind of equate that to this. What would be the point of being pro-like activists, blah, blah, blah. Activists. When you won your pro-life stance, what do you do then? Especially for these people who are a wide term political pro-life. Because they're politically pro-life when they only care about that life once it's in the womb to birth. But after birth, they don't care. And they prove that they don't care because when they shout at the top of their lungs with such moral conviction about the unborn, they don't care about school programs. They don't care about the health care for the child or the mother. Education goes out the window. As Apparently, according to this administration's version of a Secretary of Education, um, if you break it all down to all the things that she wanted to deconstruct, education is only for the wealthy, for the charter school folk that are able to afford the gold-plated education that allows their CEO children to become CEOs themselves. Everyone else, the public school level folk, us in the middle and lower ground, oh, well, we'll educate them enough for them to push the buttons and do the manual labor and have a basic knowledge of math. But that's as far as they will get in life, because they certainly wouldn't want any of us to advance higher than that. So there's that. But that is the one minor possibility that they will talk the big game, and then we'll get up to that line, and then not cross it. And it'll stay there and find some way for it to fail. So they can be outraged with it. They'll be outraged with you that believes so fervently on there being no abortion in this land. And they will stoke your hatred for those who are pro-choice and for those doctors who are they are trained to perform certain things, but it's not the doctor's fault that people go to them asking for these services to be provided. But let's blame them anyway, right? So you keep that up, and then you get more money and more money. So it's one of the reasons why some things just don't work in DC, because there's too much money in opposing something than actually solving a problem. So there's that. I wonder, however, if it does come to pass that indeed Roe goes down and goes back to the states, and people will make the illusion of, well, that's not so bad. They're just the state. You just go to the state that provides, or stay in the state that doesn't provide, or just travel to another state when you need to. Well, the thing about that though is that we already seen in the last few years with these heartbeat bills that there are certain states that actually will go out of its way to punish the woman. Beyond the fact of them trying to get to abortion in their state, they will punish her going out of state for an abortion. They will punish anyone with her that is helping her go across state lines for an abortion. It is fundamentally just awful. It is just making sure that whatever choice you thought you had, that was short-lived, and you didn't really have it to begin with. And they will make sure that you cannot exercise what you think is your right. I have like a hypothetical question that I would ask my favorite social media group, My Haunt Middle America, which is run by Vin and Sori. If you check them out on YouTube, they do awesome reviews of music. The way they do it is obviously they come at it as never hearing any of these songs beforehand, and so this is the first time you're hearing it. You see a bunch of people do this online. I love these type of reaction ones, but I love theirs best because it's a husband and wife, Vin and Sori, and one of my favorite reviews of them was them doing Disturbed's version of Sound of Silence. And how I can describe this, how they do this, is that Vin will hear the music, will listen to the music, and you can tell from his face that he's analyzing the song, he's deconstructing the lyrics, and then he's putting it back together with all the logic of the words, the melody, and he's reading the story. Story, on the other hand, she feels it. It is a beautiful mixture of both of them. How she will close her eyes and she will listen to the words, and she will get moved by the words. And when it's all said and done, then they talk about it. And since they're reading these songs cold, they don't always, they don't always get like the actual gist of what the song is. They will know it, but they won't know the actual story. But they will get pretty close in the guesstimation of what the story meant or what was the song about, right? So they do reviews on music, but they also run a Facebook group called Middle America. They also do videos on political topics, which they also call Middle America. I'm a member and admin of their group, and what I like about this group is that it is not a safe zone. I am obviously, if the dozens of you that actually watch this know that I am not exactly a quiet liberal. That I am actually rather rabid and a ranter. Amazingly enough, I fit my own words. But this group doesn't represent me. It is a community of everyone. And we do not agree. We disagree. Me and Vin disagree. But that's the cool part, is that we can be friends and disagree. We can think each other is absolutely wrong, but we're not locked away in our little partisan groups and only listening to the people that we agree with, who we agree with them, and so we're bouncing back and forth in our agreements, and therefore we're not listening to the other side. And all that's left in that vacuum would be stereotype and demonizing. So this group is great because we have liberals, conservatives, people in the middle, Democrats, Republicans, libertarians, anarchists, people that believe in the system, people that don't give a shit about the system, people who think there is a better system. And we get together and we disagree. And disagreeing is always going to be better than silence. So, that being the backdrop, my hypothesis, my question to this group would be, let's say for the sake of argument, more than likely, for the sake of argument, that row goes down. And a member of Middle America, what is called the Village, comes up to any one of us and confesses that she is pregnant. We can hypothesize what the circumstances is. However, she wants to have an abortion. Now, people will counsel her against it. Those who are fervent believers of pro-life will counsel her. Not out of hate, not out of disgust, not out of political, expediency, like political pro-life. I mean, people who actually care about her bringing her child to term, caring about that child and her after the child is born, probably wanting to make sure that they have a good enough life for the start out, make sure there's healthcare, make sure there's money, make sure there's food on the table. People who lovingly care, okay? But nonetheless, this young lady, or middle-aged lady, depending on this depending on this particular person who is hypothetical, still wants an abortion. She lives in a state that is against abortion and after Roe, and perhaps one of these states that has within their heartbeat bill the caveat that if a woman leaves a state to go to another state to have an abortion, she should be penalized and imprisoned and charged with a crime over it. And anyone who helps her gets charged with a crime for it. The hypothetical is, you're a fervent believer of your pro-life stance, and Rose gone, and the state that she lives in will punish her punitively, take her to court, try to convict her, try to put her in prison for having an abortion or attempting to have an abortion. And she tells you this in all confidence. Would you turn her in to protect the child? See, this is one of those situations that maybe that sounds far-fetched, but that can happen. And I know people who have wonderful, like I said, wonderful loving heart. Is not vindictive, is not evil, is not that they don't feel like they're ripping away somebody's right, but nonetheless, this is one of those situations where would you do what you could to protect this unborn child? Or would you protect this person who came to you in confidence, that told you what was going on with her, that listened to your counsel, but nonetheless still wanted to make that choice, even though that choice is now illegal in her state? I don't know if I'm going to actually post that, but sometimes I have an urge to do that. Alright, now, beyond Roe versus Wade, there are other things that are also likely to be affected or go down thanks to the 6-3 majority. When Amy Coney Barrett's name was brought out as a nominee, Judge Thomas and Judge Alito came out publicly saying that they wanted to readdress gay marriage. Because, especially with Thomas, they want to eliminate that. And with a 6-3 majority, even if Justice Roberts goes with the Democrats, 5-4 majority could be what ends the legality of gay marriage. Then you go back to the gray area of civil unions, or maybe kick that back to the states too. So, one state, you are happily married to your husband, if you're a man, to your wife, if you're a woman. In that state, you are legally recognized as man and man, or woman, in a loving relationship, no less than any heterosexual relationship, until you go to another state. And do we go back to the days of when, we have sodomy laws and enticing neighbors to look in people's windows? So, if anything nefarious, like people living in a loving relationship, is happening. Because that's the problem with these type of things, where you roll something back. Because you roll it back, you risk the regression to go further, because you have to reinforce this rollback. So you have to do things in order to confirm, these things are happening, so that they can be punished for it. There's so many other things that is a worry about this particular court. This particular court makeup. Trump made it clear, public. He said the quiet part out loud, which for him is every time he fucking speaks. He wanted her on the bench as fast as possible because if the election gets contested and it goes to the Supreme Court, then they will keep him in the presidency. They will ensure this. And when you think about the people who are on the court now, there are 3 members now on the court who are either judges or lawyer assistants that helped during Bush v. Gore, that helped push for the recount to stop so that Bush could be elected. That situation where the votes were so minor in number but so significant and important that it turns a district from one color to the other when giving a presidency. That could happen again. We already seen the wheels in motion upon trying to devalue mail-in voting. You've seen Republican efforts in states trying to stop the counting of mail-in votes after a certain period of time, after Election Day. We have seen articles on Trump campaign staff admitting to reporters that if mail-in ballots do not get counted, well, before Election Day, and it goes to the point where it gets to the date when they elect state electors, because the electors are the ones that actually certifies and confirms where the electoral college votes go, right? And who becomes president. Then they will simply put in friendly electors in certain states who they know will throw the votes out. And having a 6-3 majority to protect that. How does it feel to be a person like me who already did my voting? To know that just from a court case that could take away your vote and invalidate it. I did my voting in person. Stand in line 2 hours, cast my vote was cast. It's there. It is a number in the list. It is not in doubt. People who've been mail-in voting already. Early voting and mail-in voting, we have already passed 67 million. 67 million. You know the vote count of 2016 between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump? They were divided between the two. She was ahead by 3 million, but it was something like 67 million. And Trump got like 64 million. 67 million people already early voted and already mailed in vote. So I actually wonder how many people is left to actually vote in person on Election Day. I'm sure it's plenty. Sure is a good majority, perhaps. We have seen turnouts, record-breaking turnouts, in not only counties but in full states. That is making all these political Nostradamus folk on the news scratch their heads and maybe wonder if, like, the political norms of our fates is a little bit different this time around. But, it would be sad if all that enthusiasm, all the people standing in line for hours, and no matter how many hours it took, they did it, and they feel good afterwards, that they did their part like I did my part. Like, in an article, in a video, of the 104-year-old lady, someone who was born before women had the right to vote. She was in line She cast her vote. Guess who? You don't have to guess. It wasn't Trump. But imagine if, at the stroke of a pen on a Supreme Court decision, or on the biased determination of friendly electors, specifically installed for the express purposes of throwing votes out. Imagine my vote, your vote, that 104-year-old lady's vote, gone, invalidated. It not even mattering. We can be there. We can be in that point. The few things that can be done to prevent that. One being that on election day, whatever's left of the vote, that if you were a Donald Trump fan, that Donald Trump hits that 270 on election night. 270 or above. And that anything happens afterwards from the mail-in voting, it becomes redundant. If it's not even a question. Or if you're a Joe Biden fan, same thing applies. Joe Biden hits the 270 or above 270 on election night. That's actually even more interesting because of all the time that Donald Trump spent railing against mail-in voting, that had a sycophantic Republican lemmings rail against mail-in voting, wouldn't be it an ironic amusement that he would have to rely on mail-in voting? That the one thing that he was bitching and moaning about, saying that it was fraught with fraud and corruption and any of this other bullshit, that would be his only choice, his only way of getting enough votes to change the trajectory of the Electoral College, perhaps? You know, I see people thinking that Trump's going to win this in a landslide. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Trump can't win. Of course Trump can win. And he'll be acknowledged as the winner. He'll be the second-term president of the United States. But you're out of your mind to think it would be by a landslide. Status of the fact that, however people take Hillary Clinton was the most hated person for 30 years. People hated her when she was First Lady, when they asked her, about what she's going to do as First Lady, and she expressed herself, I'm going to paraphrase this, expressed that she wasn't going to be a person that was just going to sit at home. That she wasn't going to be sitting at home, that she was actually going to go out and work. Early 90s, we still had plenty of people who still lived for the days of Donna Reed, and the men would go out to work and the women would tend house. Well, she wasn't that. She went out. She worked. She earned her space. Good or bad, here or gone. Whether she was a corrupt woman or just, someone who was ambitious and people took that ambitious as for evil. She went out and earned her keep. But she was the most hated person in 30 years. She was running for president for a second time. There was scandal abound around her. There was an FBI in the last week, like this last week, putting out a letter upon, about investigating her, that she was doing improper things with her emails. They took Anthony Weiner's laptop after they went after him for thinking that there might be Hillary emails on them. It turns out, yeah, there were Hillary emails, the same emails they had, because it's fucking emails. His wife, who worked for Hillary Clinton, had emails. Wow. The same ones they had. You know, in the last week, then they go determine that, oh, she did things improper, but they weren't illegal, so carry on. Yeah, well, that didn't give a shit. Regardless of all that, and regardless of Trump winning, Trump did not win with the popular vote. And this wasn't a Bush v. Gore thing upon it being just a few votes going towards Gore over Bush. No, no, no. This was 3 million votes in the majority towards Hillary Clinton. He didn't win that in a landslide. So you think he would win it in a landslide with Joe Biden? With 4 years and an example of what a Trump presidency looks like? But he can win. He absolutely can win. We will see. Either he wins it righteously, which, again, can happen, or he wins it through what we are concerned about, through the courts, and through electors that will toss votes out. People worry what he would do if he actually lost. That if the trajectory is true, because we have to, since 2016, we have to preface it that, you know, momentum between any point when someone announces they're running for president to the day of election day, any proposed hypothesis of where the election is going, anything about momentum, that is all conjecture. That is all wishful thinking. Even if you have the numbers of polls and likely voters and new voters and old voters and such, and they say, oh, he's ahead 5 points here, he's ahead 6 points there, he's ahead 17 points here. That's great. That's probably good for an emotional thing. But on election night, all that can change. And there will be no reading of tea leaves. There will be no reading of palms. You will know. But people worry, what will Trump do if he's voted out? If on election day, Joe Biden wins 270 popular vote, even without the late mail-in votes, that it is so definitive on that night that it gets called. What will Trump do? What will his ego do with that? Because that's one of the problems that people bring up, is that maybe his ego simply can't handle it and will deny it. He denies a lot of things in reality, folks. I mean, you may chalk it up that he's joking around, or he's playing around with the crowd, or he gives them false information and they lap it up. I sometimes feel like his campaign rallies is really less about the presidency than it's more about being therapy sessions for him, where he vents his diatribe out to an audience that eats it up and gives him praise and adoration and positivity back. So he feeds on that. So maybe after the presidency he'll still making rallies, because he will need that. But, you know, when you watch politics, at least as many years as I have, I've been politically conscious, not necessarily at the point of me first voting, but even before then. I've been politically aware for at least through the mid 90s on up. I have not seen a political candidate like Trump going into a second term who is so desperate to disparage his opponent, but he can't quite do it through policy. I have never heard desperate flailing as he has in his rallies, like on Joe Biden. I mean, we can go through a preliminary cursory list, a small one, because there's so many more. But let's start with Joe Biden's going to end your Second Amendment rights. Joe Biden is going to. The latest one was Joe Biden is going to cancel Thanksgiving. He's going to cancel Christmas. He's going to cancel weddings. Joe Biden is going to hurt the Bible. Joe Biden is gonna hurt God. What the fuck are you talking about? And the funniest part is that when he was down in that retirement community in Florida, and he's scaring these old folks that Joe Biden's going to come and take away your air conditioning. Yeah, Joe Biden's going to come in and he's going to rip away your AC units. Oh, he's coming for it. He's coming for your Frigidaire. Oh, and incidentally, there's kind of a reason why the elderly is kind of skeetering away from Trump. Maybe because Trump decided to insult Biden by claiming he's old. By putting him in a picture of him in a wheelchair with other old folk. You want old folk to vote for you after you just insulted them? You know, I'm not going to go into the caveats of why Joe Biden was not my first pick. Or my second pick, or my third pick. But you have to acknowledge through the issues that people have drawbacks with him, some due to his age, some who worry about his mental capacity, some who knows about the stuff that he's done in the past, the policies that he pushed that may not be so woke in the 2020 world. The problem with Trump is that he can't play the same playbook that he did on Hillary on Biden because Biden is not that hated. Sorry. He is not that hated. And the thing about it, you can't label him as a radical liberal, you know, some leftist. Did he push progressive measures? Sure, but he's going to push it from the point of view of the center. Republicans are coming out to support Biden, not only the fact that Donald Trump as an entity is destroying the Republican Party, or mutating it into something that no longer represents the Reagan Republicans or the Eisenhower Republicans or obviously no TR or Lincoln Republicans anymore, but some new mutated form that is the Trump Republicans. So they oppose that and they support Biden. And the thing that people tend to miss, especially people who really want to be that rabid, especially on the left, that also doesn't like Biden because he is not as left as they are. Why Biden has a plus is that he is in that centrist mode that he can compromise with Republicans. I had said this numerous times on my videos, that things don't shift instantly. We don't change our gears that quickly. People will say about him and fracking. First of all, they'll say he's against fracking, or that he's for fracking, and then when you dig into what his policy issue is about fracking, is he doesn't want fracking on federal land. He doesn't want new fracking, but any fracking that exists can continue to do so, which is it's a standard political move. You keep things in existence. Don't damage that. Don't do anything to harm that, while you're looking at alternatives, so that in the future you don't need this anymore. A lot of major issues, went that way. That things just didn't shift from one thing to another like that. I mean, it took a civil war to accomplish the abolitionist dream of removing slavery. But a lot of things happened from the first presidency on up. Little incremental things, while we were a slaveholding nation that was working its way to combating it. Very minor. When people look at it in hindsight, as if she didn't go far enough. But, the outlawing, the banning of international slave trade, to the point where you could not, as a slaveholding nation, you could no longer get slaves directly from Africa. It had to be slaves that were born or derived from the West Indies or on the continent. That's an incremental small thing, but it happened. And then you get to the other small thing. This is the Great Compromise that prevented a civil war for 30 years. But the Great Compromise that any territory that becomes a state has the choice to become either a free state or a slave state. Which of course ruffled a lot of feathers of people who were for the slaveholding power, because they wanted to expand that power as each state from the Midwest on over was choosing either being free or slave. Before there was a civil war, there was a civil war in the territory of Kansas that lasted years on the question of being a free state or a slave state. So yeah, this type of situation, where it comes to it, fracking is not a new political move. It's just not an instant move. He could be against fracking, but understands that fracking is necessary or is approved of in certain states. And it is a political calculation of saying, like, especially in Pennsylvania, is that, no, you can keep your fracking if you like fracking, but I just don't want there to be new fracking. And no fracking on federal land. That is a compromise. Some people who are in their left camp or right camp do not want us to compromise, do not want us to talk to each other. And there are places like Middle America when we do. I circle this back, of course. But that is an example of what America should be. We should be able to disagree with each other, as long as we're listening to each other, and then maybe through those listening in our conversations, in our arguments, in our debates, that at some point we relent, and then we look for the compromise, we look for the middle ground. Progression is not one way only or another way only. It is, you get something, I get something. I concede something, you concede something. We agree, we take 2 steps forward. That is progress. Joe Biden can compromise with Republicans. Joe Biden doesn't draw, enthusiastic crowds. He's not has the charisma of a Bernie Sanders. He's not promising anything far-fetched. He does say that he wants to represent everyone. Does Donald Trump want to represent everyone? No. He can barely say that. You know, it comes to the point when you compare the two that Donald Trump openly admits to his crowd, who cheers at everything because they're just so goddamn entertained by him, that when he's in a town, in a state that he desperately needs, he tells these people that he doesn't want to be in that town. That if he didn't need to be there, he wouldn't be there. Like Erie, Pennsylvania. He said that in Erie. You know, if he didn't think he needed, do you think he would really be there? You drive past it. He said that about a lot of places. And then people ate it up. I don't know, because of the sound of his voice. Maybe they don't like Erie themselves, their own home. Wow. That's so entertaining. That's such insightful. Who says that? You know, there will be a point. Either it happens next Tuesday into next January, or it happens 4 years from now, but after he is gone, we as a country are going to have a talk on what we thought America was, what we thought America should have deserved, what America should have had personal, political, national pride in themselves. You know, the near veneration and near demigodhood that certain people were given because they were presidents of the United States. Now, how hallowed ground the office of the presidency was, was. Maybe will be again. But how all that illusion is gone, thanks to this guy. If there ever was there at all. We will see what happens on Tuesday. If Trump wins again, then he wins again. He will be president of the United States. How he gets there, the circumstances of it, we are allowed to question. If we find that there is bullshit about it, regardless of it being foreign or domestic or judicial or legislative, if there was some loopholes being used that, he could not win outright, so electors get involved, if the Supreme Court gets involved to force the issue, to invalidate our votes. But nonetheless, unless that gets resolved, he will be president of the United States. That is a statement of fact, if he wins again. But that does not lead me to think, oh, let's give him a try. I think he lost the give the try at murderers and rapists when he went down the escalator. When he spasmed out to make fun of a disabled reporter that called his fan base, who went out and beat down a homeless man and urinated on him because they called him illegal, said they're just too full of being patriotic. To destroying the image of a president of the United States, being a leader of a free world, to being a superpower, a guy who in the first UN get-together shoves aside the leader of, Montenegro? Because he was in his way, and then you see the picture, then you're, that guy was a world leader. That guy was a leader of a country. You should have slapped the shit out of him. No, you didn't, because he's a leader, and he has decorum, and he has respect. The type of things that Trump takes advantage of other things, because he shatters norms. We need norms again. We need to have respect again. We need to respect ourselves again. And stop making excuses for him. Because in reality, you're not making excuses for him. You're making excuses for yourself for supporting him. Because Trump would not be where he was without people who were sycophants, bobbing their heads, propping him up, protecting him. He's just saying what we're thinking. Well, you were thinking it, weren't you? Alright, 1 hour. I haven't done one of these in an hour in a while. Try to cut them down, but I guess I had so much to say. Alright, Ranter rants because of the urge to rant is always rising. Maybe after this election I'll calm down and then I'll talk about wrestling, Dungeons and Dragons, the weather. I don't know. In any event, I love you guys, tolerate you guys, have a distinct passive memory of some of you. Only some. See you later.